Welcome back, everyone. Episode number. Oh boy, should I check this out first? But
should be in the top left-hand corner.
It's episode 38. Look at the technology. God, we're good at this. Episode 38 of the Unlocked Podcast. Today, I am your host with the most. I've been working on my intro skills.
Oh, it's you. It shows. Right. There's a lot.
Right. I'm starting to bring it together. But my name is Lars Johnson, coming from the ever so humble Calgary, Alberta. That's in Canada.
Ladies and gentlemen,
oh boy,
live from studios unknown, broadcasting.
I figured out a way to get the intro back in.
Boy, guys, when did we become so tech savvy? Like, I don't want to talk about the last 20 minutes trying to get my microphone to work. But
what a disaster. It's every time we set up to record.
Yeah.
It's another issue, like a different issue. It's either the microphones, the cameras, the internet.
Tony's picture today was crooked. So
Tony's picture or his microphone boom stand. Today it was a whole plethora of situations.
It was a disaster. Absolutely
what a
mess.
So
if you're just my coffee mug today, though. So
that's good.
At least on brand.
If you're a new listener, maybe I'll expand a little bit, but this is kind of the content you're going to get from this podcast. It's the Unlock Podcast. We are three business owners from across the world.
You know,
sound pretty good.
Small side here. My sister-in-law was visiting today, and I made her a cup of coffee and gave her in the Unlocked Podcast mug, and she goes, "Oh, thank you. That's my favorite mug. Look at that." We have a fan that doesn't even listen to us probably, but she likes our mug. So
that's
that was a great, wonderful, the second great story for today.
A wonderful add to our introduction. So for those listening, that little ADHD moment, that was Tony Hokinson from Minneapolis. And then the guy cackling silently in the background, Chad Lingefeld from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you sound like in my mind.
Oh, thanks.
Yes, and as mentioned, three business owners. We own lock and security companies across the globe.
Ladies and gentlemen, live
should we just let this play?
Unknown, broadcasting straight to your ears. For the podcast that breaks barriers, picks locked ideas, and unlocks the truth of the lock industry. Welcome to Unlocked. Introducing your host, locked in a triangular ring. In this corner, the collaborative leader that fosters a growth-oriented culture, Tony Hawkinson. And in the other corner, the man with the plan, the visionary leader who empowers his employees. Chad Lingefeld.
That's you, Chad.
Last but not least, the wild card, the enigma, the ever so polite, and fosters a company culture that values its employees. Lars Johnson.
That's me, guys.
Listen up and get ready, because this is Unlocked.
All right. That was exciting.
We should probably give that shout out. That was going back from about episode 4, probably.
It's a little farther in than that, but we've got the technology now. We can use this on a regular basis. It's a great introduction. The one thing that doesn't come across in that intro song is the sarcasm around the ever so polite Lars Johnson. The sarcasm just doesn't land exactly.
That's the takeaway.
Yeah, that's what I heard. But so that's who we are. Welcome, guys.
That's
if you're watching YouTube, we do need to point out that Greta did a fantastic job hanging up the Curious George artwork for Tony in the back.
It's beautiful artwork. It's actually been up there for probably 3 months now, but I've been hanging out in the sauna. So
very important tidbit to add to the story.
It is, and I did go back and look at the purchase date of that artwork. December 17th. Anybody want to guess the year?
2022.
21.
Sorry. 2020.
So no way.
It took 5 years for Tony to hang that picture.
Yes.
Oh my God. 5 years
to commit to did she hang it with like a
Before
puncture
Greta
in the
finally
wall,
did
or
it.
is it just a command strip?
Yeah, it doesn't matter what she used. She
Doesn't matter.
did a great job.
She did.
Oh man,
That's great. All right, I like it.
Great picture. One of the best gifts I've received from you.
it is.
And I've referred to Tony as Curious George forever because he is a curious human and he likes to ask a lot of questions. When he calls, there's a picture of Curious George that pops up on my phone.
I have a lot of ways of describing Tony.
Yeah, curious is one of them.
That's one of the more,
Friendliest.
for our explicit rating would tell me not to.
Yeah.
But
Well, that's awesome. Well, it's good to see you guys again today.
yeah, I mean, this is one of the riveting intro, of all time intros. We heard about Tony had a little coffee cup thing, and now his Curious George 5 years.
5 years. Yeah.
4.5.
It takes a lot of decisions. So we had a listener say that we end the podcast very abruptly and refer to it as a are we trying to replicate The Sopranos? Which,
Sopranos
fun fact,
ending. Yeah.
I've never seen The Sopranos, so I didn't get the reference. But
It's great.
anyway.
Great show.
It's
upon
it
further review, it apparently is very abrupt at the end. So I can't guarantee that we're going to fix it. But as a callback to our last episode, we did end on an abrupt cliffhanger that Lars was going to come back with a surprise topic because mostly he did not prepare for the conclusion of the last episode.
Or
I gotta
anything.
tell
really.
you, I can't think of anything else but the way that you pronounce cliffhanger.
We could have an entire
Cliffhanger.
episode around your pronunciation of things
Your
versus my pronunciation. of things.
Goofy wording. Yes, but the cliffhanger that we were, God, what a world. So I wanted to leave it as a surprise. Nothing to do with my
Lack of
preparation. But today, I knew this would be a hot topic to debate because I knew this is literally Tony's favorite thing in the world. I know he's married and he has a child, but this is Tony's favorite thing in the world. It is the age-old debate and discussion around the Visionary and the Integrator. Okay, so these are two fairly distinct roles that it's an important understanding when you, certainly early on, is understanding how you as an entrepreneur, what your strengths are, what brings you energy, what sucks the life out of you. Because generally you'll have more characteristics of one of these two types of profiles. And I know we're making a reference, the Visionary Integrator, the first time I heard it, I think it was in Traction, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm not sure if it comes before that, but Traction's a book we've referenced quite a bit. Gino Wickman is the book. If you're an entrepreneur and listening to this, highly, highly, highly recommend. That's probably book number 1 I would read. There's also a spinoff called Rocket Fuel, which is just a shorter version. I think it's like chapter 3 or chapter 4 of Traction specifically. But yeah, it's what am I missing here, guys? Somebody explain to me, or one of you tell me about the visionary role. Maybe Chad, that's probably, you're reasonably familiar with this because I think there's a lot of hand waving and beard stroking and things in the visionary role.
I think I first heard the different terms with a book called the Idea Monkey or something like that.
Free the Idea Monkey.
There you go. Free the Idea Monkey. And then it continued to perpetrate into several other books that I read around the topic, and then a very definitively inside of the book for Traction. And it was, it's actually pretty interesting that you bring this up, Lars, because I think it's a huge hurdle if you don't understand those two roles, and if you're trapped in either the alternate role or you're trapped in the middle and trying to do both inside of your business. It can be a massive limiter to your growth. It can be a limiter to your skill set. It can be a very stress-inducing element as well. So for years, I probably operated as an integrator, which we'll define in a few minutes. And when I finally understood the character traits of a visionary, then I understood where a lot of my frustrations and my stress and my fatigue and my failures happened. So from a visionary perspective, somebody that is thinking long term, very lax on what's happening today. Today is already done. You wake up today, today's already done. What's 6 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road? What do we need to be thinking about then? They're very strategic focused, meaning we need to get from position A to position C. Don't really care how we get there. Just know that I need to get to that other position. And oftentimes in very blurry or ambiguous around how we get from A to C.
Ambiguous, yes. All right. That would be a key word there. Details, details. You'll figure that out later. Because you may have to change it along the way, but we just know, hey, we need to get from here to here. So the challenge with that particular individual at times they're going to under communicate the details of how to get from position A to position B, position C, etc., because they don't really care about that. The how we get there is less important that we get there, which can be confusing for the people that are actually trying to get there. So that's really where the visionary role sits in an actual business operation. It doesn't necessarily have to be the owner. It doesn't necessarily have to be the CEO, the president, whatever. It can show up in a lot of different areas. But and I think that may be one of the topics that we can discuss is if you identify that in one of those non-ownership roles, how you handle it and what you do with it. But that's kind of the description of what that visionary is. Yeah, I go back and I just looking at a list, famous kind of visionary profiles. Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Walt Disney, Richard Branson, Oprah Winfrey, Jeff Bezos, all these big picture. Where are we going 10, 15 years down the road? How are we going to get there? I don't know. It's somebody else's problem. But,
And oftentimes I think you'll see those guys, those visionaries in the early stages of a startup or a business operation, they will fall into the integrator role or in the practitioner role. They'll have to figure out how to do it because, again, you see these things are kind of go hand in hand. The person that says, hey, I want to get from here, from 0 to 100, from position A to position C. I need to get to those positions, but I don't quite understand all the elements that will get us there. So I may need to go dive into the weeds, figure it out, and get a little understanding of it. Then I can at least come back and explain that or communicate it. So you might see them fall into that integrator, that operator role, that practitioner role for a period of time while they're discovering, and then that probably is short-lived.
Yeah, my favorite is the visionary is like, oh well, it's not that hard, and then the integrator is like, it's incredibly difficult. Yeah, no.
Well, but if you look at the Jeff Bezos situation, right? Like he started the process, he built some of the infrastructure and took it to a certain point, so he understood what needed to happen, but he had to quickly shift at a point, bring other folks in and allow the actual integrators to do the work versus him. Oh, and that's how it became a successful operation.
I mean, Zuckerberg is pretty classic, right? They didn't make a nickel for a long time. Then, brought in Sheryl Sandberg and all of a sudden they actually make some money. That's
correct. Well, Zuckerberg's another really good example too, Lars, because you think about, go back, I don't even remember what year it was, 2018, 2019, whenever it was that he announced the whole metaverse. That's visionary talk right there. If you listen to Elon Musk give any of his presentations around Tesla, Starlink, Neuralink, any of those
SpaceX,
he's going to say things that are so out there that you're like, that doesn't even make sense.
We're going to go to Mars.
Correct. And it's so far out down the line, but when it happens, okay. So Zuckerberg was talking about the metaverse, and it was so weird for everybody. Nobody really understood what it was or how to use it. we're actively. I don't think it actually turned out to exactly be what he thought it was at the beginning. But
Not
the
yet.
elements, that's fair, right? But the elements are building itself to get to that point.
Yeah. Tone, I'm going to throw this back to you. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to throw this back to you. Take us down the integrator path. That's the Visionary is kind of that big picture forward. Hey, what could go wrong? The integrator, what is that?
The integrator is your classic Roy Disney. Tim Cook.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. It's unfortunate, for better or worse. They're typically people that are a little less known. Steve Wozniak, I think he was somewhat of an integrator-ish.
Eric Schmidt's probably like that was the CEO or one of the founders, right? Brandon, these are the founders at Google, and they were.
So with the integrator role, it's typically more of that operational mindset. It's the how, right? And it's not what we're doing; it's how we're going to do that, and not more problem solving and strategic, or not less strategic, more practical. What are we going to do to get from A to B? So in Chad's case, if Chad's the visionary, the integrator Chad's going to say, "Hey, we want to go here." The integrator is going to say, "Okay, here's how we're going to get there. We're going to take this road. We're going to go this way. We're going to go that way."
Steve Ballmer. Yeah, that was another one. There you go.
Yep. So to me, the easiest way to describe the difference is kind of a sales mind versus an operational mind. Typically, to draw back on culture index, your integrator is going to be a lot higher attention to detail, possibly have some good skill sets to integrate people together from a social ability standpoint, possibly have a little bit lower ingenuity in culture index, and be more of that facts and data person, but also the practical of like, how are we going to get this done? And I think what's pretty interesting for me from the book was the revelation of it's really hard to do both at once. You can really be slowed down. I think traditionally the mindset is you have this person at the top of the organization and they have to do everything. They have to be in charge of ideas and then they have to go make those happen. And specifically in Traction, how it outlines it is kind of the I'm using some loose terms here, but the CEO a lot of times is the visionary, or the board of the directors is the visionary, and then the president is the operational person, or a lot of times you might have like a director of operations or operations manager that oversees all the business functions. And I think you can kind of accomplish that in a multitude of different ways. I think the traditional sense is having one integrator that kind of manages the team and manages the how. But I think there's also ways that you can solve that with having a team of integrators. I remember having a conversation with Chad a while back of, asking him, who's your integrator in your company? And this was, I think, 5-6 years ago. And you're like, well, I kind of have a team of integrators. So Chad would come up with an idea, go meet with a person in a specific department and say, here, how can we make this happen? But to me, the biggest surprise was just that ability to understand, like, you typically fit in one of two categories, and there are certain people that can fill both categories at once, but it really slows you down. And the book Rocket Fuel really talks about how having those separate roles, it becomes essentially rocket fuel, and you take off because you're leaning into your strengths. And I really like that aspect because I'm all about people trying to figure out what they're good at and enjoying their role. And I think if you put Chad into an integrator role for too long, he's going to burn out, and vice versa. If you put an integrator into a visionary role, they may not burn out, but they may not come up with the best ideas, and your company may somewhat plateau and, for lack of a better term, burn out. So,
So, and again, I would recommend anyone just do a Google search or use GPT or something just to, look at the outline of what the differences are. But, one thing that always comes up when we start, labeling things, I'm going to throw it out there, which one's better? This is the classic, which one's better?
Neither.
Exactly. And it's, is one good? Is one bad? No. It's really what we're talking about, and what we spend every week going over is how do we improve? How do we improve our business? How do we get the most out of ourselves and our teams and people around it? And this is really about understanding where you fit, because if you are the entrepreneur, if you are the the owner, if you are the key stakeholder in the organization, the one luxury you have is you get to decide what you want to do. Might not mean today, because if you're like most of us, you don't have a choice. You just are grinding, unless you're Chad and you're golfing. But I mean, most of us are in the grind, but you get to decide what you're doing and then fill a team around you with the things that you don't you don't like. So, Chad, I see like any good show, I see you've started reading a book while we're recording here. So I don't want to, I don't want to get distract you from this, but do you want to maybe tell us what are you doing right now?
Well, as we've discussed before, I like to. I still do listen to a lot of audiobooks, and it's the fastest way that I can consume content. But I always like to purchase the physical book so that I can have it as a reference guide whenever I need to resource something. So on my bookshelf behind me is not just it's not just for
show.
It's actually a functional thing. So I was I pulled up the Visionary role, some DNA. Like, here's some criteria around it. And this is from the book Rocket Fuel that we were just discussing. Can potentially be the founding entrepreneur, but doesn't always have to be. Has lots of ideas for growth and creation. A strategic thinker, always sees the big picture. Has a pulse on the industry and target markets. They're good with research and developing new products and services. They manage big external relationships with customers, vendors, and industries. They get involved with customers and employees when vision is needed. They inspire people. They're creative problem solvers, create the company vision and protect it, sell and close super big deals, connect the dots, and on occasion do the work, provide the service, make the product. So that's the visionary DNA. And this is one of the things that I wanted to bring up on this, and we can look through it on the integrator side as well. But here are some of the challenges as the visionary. So if you're listening to this going, and one of the things I was actually processing while you were talking was, if I'm a locksmith business owner listening to this podcast, which is our target market, I'm going to sit there and go, this seems a bit corporate America for me. Like we're talking, I sell locks, I sell doorknobs, I fix stuff. Visionary-Integrator sounds like a bunch of bullcrap.
Oh, Chad, that's explicit warning. Sorry about that, guys. Let me apologize to everyone listening about Chad's bullcrap.
Yeah. So I think, but it is real. No matter the size of your business, this understanding this concept really is impactful because it will start to unpack some of the challenges that you've had. So here are some of the challenges that a visionary would have. They can be inconsistent. They can have organizational whiplash, meaning we're going to do this, and then I think
today we're doing this.
Boom, and we just completely switch gears, and everybody in the company is coming around behind you, even if it's two people are going, "What in the heck? Why? What just changed?" They can have a lack of clear direction. They can undercommunicate. They're reluctant to let go at times. This can be a challenge. They can underdevelop their leaders or managers. Call back to episode 2 episodes ago where we talked about the leadership pipeline. That's one of the reasons that's important. Oftentimes can be seen as a genius with 1,000 helpers. Ever been in that category before? As well, that's the guy. He knows everything, and he's got a bunch of people that are helping him. And they're resistant to following standardized processes. They are quickly and easily bored. No patience for details. They can be all foot on the gas pedal with no brake, and the drive can be a little too hard for most people, so they can overwhelm a lot of folks.
That sounds exhausting. I mean, to work with that person. Yeah. It's are you flipping to the integrator version of this as well?
I am, yeah.
Oh, okay.
You want me to go ahead and jump into that as well?
Yeah, I like this book report.
Okay. So an integrator, they are going to be typically focused on communication, accountability, team unity. They're going to have good follow through, prioritizations, execution. They're going to be the glue that holds everything together. They're going to execute the business plan. So they're going to understand what needs to be done, and they're going to go make sure that it gets done, and protect against the whiplash. They typically are personally accountable. They are good with self-management. They're decisive. They're a catalyst for team cohesion. They're an effective conflict manager. Visionaries oftentimes create the conflict. The integrator can manage or protect the conflict. They're resilient. They're able to understand and evaluate others, forward thinking, and a continuous learner. Some of the challenges with them is with an integrator, the job can be thankless. So they just feel like they're making sure everything's getting done, and oftentimes what they're actually accomplishing is overlooked. They can come across pessimistic, so people can perceive them, especially a visionary, can perceive
Somebody
them
has
as
to
being,
say no to every
Correct.
stupid idea and bullcrap that Chad comes up with. You know,
so they can be considered a negative or a hole poker. There's constant friction and tension. They can be a bearer of bad news or be the bad guy. Lack of recognition, having to say no a lot. They can be accused of moving too slowly because they are trying to make sure that it gets done effectively. So there's kind of a description from the book of how it's utilized.
Yeah, and I mean that a lot of that ties into a lot of the things we've touched on before. The last episode we talked about the yes no, right? And I was sitting here adamantly saying I hate no. I feel like I'm constantly no, right? Even just hearing me say that, right? It's like pretty obvious. I lean more towards the visionary profile. I'm curious, where do you guys see yourselves? Where do you think you fit in on that scale?
Tony, go ahead. You've been quiet a lot.
Yeah, I've
it's nice, isn't it?
There is a test that you can take in Rocket Fuel. I think you can probably find it online too, and you kind of ask you like a series. I think there's 100 questions, and it'll give you a score out of 100. Like if you're 0, it's not bad. You're just extreme integrator. If you're 100, that's not bad. That means you're extreme visionary and probably annoy the crap out of everybody.
That's kind of rude.
Kind of a shot fired.
Yeah, that was a little aggressive,
when I took
Tony.
that test, I was like 80, 85. I'm not your traditional visionary by any means. I don't. I move at a more methodical pace, but I do.
Like 5 years to figure out how to hang up a picture.
What an understatement.
I would say though, I am terrible with details, and I love to come up with new ideas, and terrible at putting them into practice. Partially why I don't hang the picture, because I get distracted pretty easily. But yeah, so I'm definitely more towards the middle, than you two, I would think, but definitely lean on the visionary side, but probably not your traditional visionary, because I move at a little slower pace than most, but definitely resonate with the ideas and struggling to make them happen.
And so how are you, one, you've acknowledged that, you've recognized that. How have you complemented that in your organization? How, if you're the idea popcorn machine, who and how does the organization not get whiplash from you?
Well, I can say they definitely have gotten whiplash from me.
Yeah.
And definitely I get accused of having too many ideas. Basically surrounded myself with people that are good at making those ideas happen. Specifically, we as an organization, we kind of struggled with details, and we made a hire a couple of years ago. And she is tremendous with details. She is probably I don't want to say your traditional integrator, but tremendous with picking up details from anybody. So she has become our expert detail person in our company, and she helps facilitate that process.
One, where did you find her? Two, what was she doing before you hired her?
So we found her through a referral. She was
from a friend?
Current employee. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
In-house referral. Okay.
Yep. She was an operations manager for another service company. Invisible Fence Invisible Fence is like a dog fence company. I don't know. I think that's
doesn't
nationwide.
matter.
Yeah. Anyways.
But she was in operations.
Yes, so she was in operations,
coordinating, dispatching kind of things, figuring out who's going where and what.
Yeah, managing the team and helping with those details, and so she had similar experience to our industry, just different industry, and so had a good experience with that. So,
and what do you think makes her so effective at what she does now, and in relation to you? Why is she such a good number 2 or 3 or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, so she is very effective because she has patience, and she is extremely good with details. So she's, not to over-reference Culture Index, but she is high C, high D. Ooh. So she specifically works well with me because she has a high level of patience, so she can deal with my slowness.
Yes.
she's also really good. I don't know if this comes out in Culture Index, but she's really good at reading between the lines, and picking up those details and almost creating the details for others to reference.
Which sounds like a social ability of,
Yes.
emotionally reading the room, understanding, because that's a key aspect, I think, of, management in general, and integrating things together is understanding the feeling of everyone. And her actual culture index is very low L, and that I think lets her read between the lines. Low logic, high. It's an interesting. She is. I don't know what. I just lost my train of thought. High attention to detail, low logic, so she can read between the lines. Right. So
but still creates those details. So she
can figure things out.
Yes, she can figure things out on her own and create the details for others.
Doesn't require the experience. We have
that
another
makes
a lot of sense.
Individual in our organization that is kind of like the integrator for our technical team.
Okay.
So he's more of the integrator of people. She's more the integrator of process. So,
gotcha.
I've got a buddy of mine that runs a completely different business, and he's very much visionary. Under communicates a lot, but he has found somebody that on his team that has worked with him for quite some time, and they've become a really great partnership from a perspective of she understands what he is inferring at times, can digest it and fill in the gaps without him having to, like, if he does that with somebody else, then they get frustrated. There's a lot of lost data that happens, and they've just kind of figured out a flow. She understands what he's saying, and then she can go take it and put it into practice. And that's finding that like, it may take you several times to do that, but finding that person that can understand the tone and the context of what you're trying to get across, and then understand when it really matters and it's important, versus it's maybe just you brainstorming something. I think those are some big factors when you're trying to pair up integrators and visionaries. And the ones that have been very successful have that element in it. Yeah,
and that this is not a episode about Culture Index, but a lot of the things that we are talking about, Culture Index, for those that aren't familiar, we do have an episode early on, probably 8 or 9, I would say, in that range, where we talk about Culture Index, and that's just an HR profiling tool that helps you understand, just helps you understand your organization and how people work. And a lot of the things that we are talking about, I'm going back to what Chad was just saying about, this sounds like a corporate America, integrator, and these are big fluff words. And, well, really what we talk about, and it's made such a big impact on the three of us. I know this because we talk about it all the time. These are all just tools that we have used to help explain our gut feelings, because we, now that we have, 13, 15 years experience in this realm, a lot of what we speak to and a lot of the direction that we give is from like an intrinsic gut feeling. And then sometimes, we have people and it works really well. Sometimes it doesn't. But some of these tools that we're talking about, Culture Index specifically, is a tool that we have just used to help communicate and find some consistency in our gut feelings. So,
So another one that I would recommend, so Culture Index is a more intensive, and I think it's a great tool. One that is very easily accessible as a starting point, just as a point of reference, because we talked about traction, rocket fuel, all these different things. Here's one additional one is from Patrick Lencioni. The book is called 6 Types of Working Genius. It's a great book, but you can purchase an assessment. It's only $25. This is not sponsored. We don't get anything from it, but
unless you're listening, Lencioni.
Yeah, exactly. Then you can contact us for sponsorship. But it's the 6 Types of Working Genius, and the reason that I'm bringing it up is, as I was going down this path of trying to identify who was going to be a singular integrator for our organization versus the path that I had previously, which was multiples. I was talking to my business coach around it, and he suggested this thing, read the book, and then did the assessment. The interesting component of it, the assessment that I had, my likely working genius areas, the top 2 that I had so there's 6, obviously.
Mhm.
The top 2 that I had, and then the top middle, or the 2 middle, and then the ones that were the frustrations. So
Mhm.
you have genius, competency, and frustrations.
Mhm.
The way that mine stacked up, I had Zach, who's our operations manager, take the assessment. His were 100% in reverse.
Mhm.
So
I've always liked Zach.
yeah,
That explains a lot, actually.
his 2 working geniuses were my 2 frustrations, and his 2 frustrations were my genius.
Yeah.
So it brings this interesting pair together
Mhm.
where we can balance off of each other.
Mhm.
And so that's when you talk about visionary and integrator in those 2 roles.
Mhm.
That's really when you can get into that secret sauce.
Complement.
then
Yeah.
you can complement each other.
Yeah.
Now, going back to if you're a 5-person operation, whatever, less than 10-person operation,
Mhm.
you're going to, how do I identify this? How do I implement this? And you may be at this point the integrator. And I would say there's a interesting component that you might be able to self-assess. If you seem like you're struggling to get past a certain point of growth where you kind of just have this ceiling or this box that's been built around your operation, you're probably the integrator, and you haven't figured out how to release those tasks. You haven't been able to figure out how to delegate, right? So you've become very compact. And you may need a visionary to help get you past that, or vice versa. You may be the visionary that is operating as an integrator, and you're just pissing people off, and that's why you can't grow. All right. Those are 2 major functions. So if you find yourself sitting here listening to this saying, yeah, this is whatever, this might just be nonsense. Well, you may be stuck into that because you've had between 5 and 10 employees, and every time you hire somebody quits or whatever, and you just get stuck in this cycle. It's probably your management style.
You're in the wrong seat.
Right. And so you have either not figured out how to bring in an integrator, or you are weak in the integrator component, or you're too stuck in the visionary and nobody can find consistencies.
Yeah, I think the working genius analogy is actually a probably more helpful one. Visionary and integrator is very broad, and I think people that like more details can get a little bit trapped in, okay, I need to fit this exact role, or I need to fit this exact role. I think the larger takeaway for me is really you need to figure out what you like and what you're good at, and make sure you are complimenting yourself. Like
I do that all the time. Compliment myself.
You don't really compliment yourself. You more so. Anyways,
I think we're talking different compliments, but go ahead.
But I think that's the biggest takeaway there is figure out what you want to be doing and making sure you're complementing your strengths, because you can call it visionary integrator. You can call it the working genius does a tremendous job with it. You can look at it with culture index. That I think is more from an employee management tool. But either way, whatever tool you're using, you want to make sure you're surrounding yourself with people that are different than you.
Yeah.
Because I know as a leadership team, even we had a lot of the same types of people.
Yeah.
And the second we started introducing people with different personality characteristics, you were able to lean on them for those things. And that's one thing working, not to be a plug again for Working Genius, but it does a really good job of creating a map of your leadership team. And you can start to see, we're really low on people that are good with enablement. We struggle with getting people help. We're really low on people with tenacity. We don't get anything done. We have great ideas. We're great at helping people, but we don't get anything done. And so I think that's almost a larger takeaway is just making sure that you're aware of yourself, aware of your team, and making sure the team complements each other.
Yeah, and that's why I think we talk about these tools so much and so often is because to any level, any amount of success you've had, you will feel a little bit of imposter syndrome where you're just kind of making it up, and you think, oh man, I hope this works out. Some part of you is thinking that. And that's where these tools really come in handy. It's like, hey, there is actually some, accuracy in data that supports what we're doing rather than just, winging it. I hate to disrupt you guys. I see, Chad, you're listening to music now, and Tony's, I don't know what Tony's doing, but, I'm going to take it to the next level. So now we've we've identified these 2 types of roles. We've identified that each of us have I guess I didn't speak to mine a whole bunch, but we all have that complementary role that takes on the stuff that we don't. I don't think there's any coincidence that the amount that we've been able to scale businesses and some of the, more successes we've had is directly related to these roles and these complements. But now let's say, okay, we found these people. How do we work together? Like, we're talking about an idea person that's like, yes, yeah, let's do that. Okay, I'm in, we'll do that. And then the other person's like, that's a terrible idea. That's a stupid idea. That's the worst idea yet. I'm like, okay, that one's okay. So how do you have two people that basically, like, Chad, you were talking about you and Zach are opposites.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm sure, like, culturally, you probably have a lot of similarities and you probably get along fine, but you guys are so different in the way you think. How do you guys work together without driving each other crazy?
Yeah. That's a great question. I believe, I believe that historically, I have driven people crazy, and the opposite role has driven me crazy as well.
If anyone's watching, you just got two big nods there.
Yeah, that's correct.
Partners.
Go ahead. Because I think all of it comes down to a level of self-awareness.
Okay.
Are you self-aware in the way that you operate? And anytime, that's not just Visionary and Integrator. That's across the board. If an individual with lack self-awareness, if I can get that out, will struggle to have a successful anything, a relationship, friendship, working relationship, career, whatever. So when I go back and look at the first 15 years of my career, there's tons of examples I can give you of frustration points that either I have caused or that I was frustrated with other people that I was working with because of the way that I operated. When I learned and started reading these things and identified myself inside of an integrator versus a visionary, or when I learned, the biggest thing for me was 22, I had this epiphany that I was operating in the middle ground where I was the visionary and the integrator simultaneously. And I uniquely identified that I was so frustrated with the integrator side, not the visionary side. That was the part that gave me energy. The integrator side drained my energy. And so I was replenishing myself daily by the visionary side and then having to drain it on the integrator side. When that awareness became visible to me, that's when I started to identify the person that I needed to put into that integrator role to relieve that from me. And it, from a two perspectives, from a number of employees perspective and from a revenue perspective and a profitability perspective. Let's go with that. 30 to 50 employees. That's been the growth since we identified that and took that off of me, the integrator part off of me. 4 million to 10 million in revenue, and profit negative net income to positive net income in that's the teens.
Important.
Right?
Positive net income. That's good.
So those are all factors of that. And it's, you could also line in there like less stress, better sleep, better, work-life integrations, all these other things. And it also increased others and other people in our organization, their input and their opportunity and their career path. So it did a lot of things.
Happiness, I would add
happiness,
because we spent a lot of time together, and there were some times there that it was frustrating.
Sure, yeah, absolutely, and so there's some patience that has to be stretched to get you to that point, so that you can integrate those two relationships, right? And identify the integrator and visionary. And secondly, it's a level of building trust and some protections. So the first thing that I said in there was this self-awareness factor, right? If I lack self-awareness on my shortcomings as a visionary, and if Zach lacks self-awareness on his shortcomings as an integrator, then that's always going to be a challenge. But once we get that open dialogue, and I can come to the table and say, Zach, I'm probably going to, every time we have a meeting, I'm probably going to bring you 5 or 6 different ideas that I think we should do. And maybe throughout the day, I'm going to come in with the next greatest idea ever that's ever become like into our organization. And I am entrusting you with, you're going to be the first person that I bring that to. And you're going to have to help me understand if it's the time to implement it or not. And there may be times that you push back on me and say no, and I'm going to push forward and say yes. Right. And there has to be an agreement at some point that if this comes up multiple times and I'm that passionate about it, then we're going to at least give it a go. But I'm also going to give you the right to veto this and say, I think this is going to be a detrimental idea at this time of our business. And right?
That's when we talk about traction, I hate to admit this, but when you read traction, the integrator is the one that has the final say.
Yeah.
Right. And coming from a very visionary focused background, but this is the greatest idea ever. But
correct.
I'm the boss. What do you mean? And then, so no isn't my favorite word if you didn't hear last episode.
Basically, the integrator is acting as your filter, not like from what you say, but what's getting done. Like running everything through them, and they're A, they are mostly doing the communication for you. B, they're saying, no, that's a terrible idea. And they're filtering out the bad ones, and they're making that decision.
Yeah. Well, they also they should have a pulse on the rest of the operation, the customer base, all that. So they can sit there and go, hey, Chad, we've got these other 5 things that we're really trying to focus on right now. In 30 days, maybe we can come back and revisit this. But if we implement this right now, it's bound for failure. It's probably going to explode, and we're just going to have more frustration. Well, then at that point, I have to have a bit of awareness to say, okay, that's why you're in that role. That's why I trust you. And so I'm gonna go back and maybe strengthen up the points a little bit. Maybe go back and do some more research to see if it's really a thing. And oftentimes, it's probably the same thing with you guys. Is in a week and a half, I may have forgotten about it, and I had the next 14 great ideas.
Week and a half.
Yeah.
Give me 20 minutes. Yeah,
exactly. And so, and if that's the case, then that's probably for the best. Right. If it comes back up in a week and a half or 2 weeks or a month, then, then there might be something to it and we have to push through it. So, and the difference is, I think this is a very valid point. If you're operating in the visionary and the integrator role simultaneously, then you don't have that filter because you lack self-awareness. And so you implement every great idea that you have, even if it's terrible.
You have to have
really good point.
Correct. Yeah. And that's where, I had this conversation with somebody probably 10 years ago, and I was like, we have started so many cool things that have just died. We just have not finished them. And that was me. That was 100% my fault because I got them started and I got them 85% of the way done. And then there was nobody to manage it moving forward. And I got bored and started working on the next cool thing.
Yeah.
So that's why we had limited growth. That's why we had struggles hiring. That's why we hit these ceilings and these different limitations, is because of those reasons. Once we put somebody in place to implement those things and keep the trains running on time, well, then it opened us up for a wild amount of possibility.
Yeah, and maybe I'll throw a question at you here, Tone, because, Chad said he kind of walks in the office and, hey, Zach, how does that? I mean, give me something tangible. Do you meet with your integrator every week at the same time? Do you have a structure? How do you make sure you're on the same page?
For clarity's sake, we don't technically have an integrator, so might not be the best person to ask this question to. But yes, so the person I was talking about earlier, that is almost like a person that helps me. She's not the integrator of our company, but she's almost my integrator. I do meet with her twice a week, and yeah.
Just to get on the same page, because I think that's the biggest challenge. And certainly early in my career, and I mean even to today, the challenge of the words that I use doesn't always correlate to what I mean. Right. And so
Say it ain't so.
The words don't mean a lot to me. It's, how I'm saying it and the emotion, all that. So, it's important just to have something consistent. And, Matt and I spend, once a week, it's usually a couple hours, and we go through and, he's like, okay, here's the 400 ideas that we discussed. These are the 2 good ones. And this is how it's going. Do you think, is this what you were like envisioning? And then, but that's really, become a strength with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, echo what you've said there, Chad, is a self-awareness where, I want to get in there like, well, let's go, let's get this done. It's not that hard.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And now we got people going every which direction. And really what happens is you don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So that's, yeah.
I think you have to give. So I really lean on this self-awareness thing, and I'm not perfect with it by any stretch. I've done it poorly for so long that's why it's very real to me. Is you have to give that person the permission to push back and challenge. And you sit in this situation where, as an owner of the business, oftentimes people may just tell you what you want to hear. And so that's very important to find the people that are going to speak truth to you, and to not just tell you what you want to hear. But then on top of that, giving them permission to push back or to say no or to say it's not the right time. And so when you can have that, then that's where you start to get the value.
Right.
So, and then to your question about the cadence,
Nope.
Yep, that's what you said.
I absolutely did not use that word.
I heard you say it.
You
it
guys
came
have
up.
your little matching calendars of stupid words of the week, but go ahead with
We should get one of
the
those.
frequency that you meet is what I was asking.
So the cadence.
Cadence of your meetings.
Yeah. So Zach and I have a standing one-on-one every Monday morning. I think it's 10 o'clock or something like that. 9 o'clock.
I bet
10 o'clock.
Zach knows when it is. But
Oh yeah. It pops up on my phone and tells me I'm supposed to be there. But we have a standing meeting, and that's we review kind of the ongoing list of topics, issues, things, whatever.
Do you produce the agenda, or does he?
He does. This is a very important thing that I did poorly for a long time. Whenever I have one-on-ones with people, if I'm the one managing the agenda, it's terrible. We have a shared doc. So if I have to, if there's something that I want to drop on there, I'll drop on there.
Yeah.
But most of the time, and this is again where Zach, from an integrator perspective, does a fantastic job, because I can text him something or talk to him about something. He adds it to the agenda. And so then it's a review mechanism for us. Okay, is this still important? Do we need to talk about it? Is this still a thing? Do we need to talk about it? And so it kind of brings up those ongoing issues.
Yeah.
Secondly, he is in 95% of all of the meetings that I'm in as well. And that has drastically increased our effectiveness of those meetings, because one, he's either taking notes or making sure that the transcription's on for the notes, but he's also scheduling the follow-up meetings outside of that.
Right.
So he listens, he's listening, and he's attuned, and he's like, okay, so we said we're going to do this. I'm going to go ahead and schedule a meeting for this in 3 weeks. And here's all the assignments for everybody to make sure this is done. And that's a major weak point of mine, because previously I would just say, yeah, this is going to be great, walk out, and then expect that everybody did what they were supposed to do, and we're just going to set up a follow-up meeting to make sure it got done.
And then in 2 months, when you remember what you said, you're like, how come this isn't done?
Correct.
Yeah. And now you're mad that,
And then you're
why didn't anyone do anything?
Yeah.
It's like,
So that's really where the integrator comes into play. Is he literally makes sure that what we say we're going to do gets done, and then he's following up with all those folks along the process to make sure that they have the resources that they need and that they're on track.
Great. So I started off by saying, you flap your arms around and yap, and then Zach actually takes the little bits that make sense and makes it work. Right. That's my take on the Visionary,
which is what
Integrator.
Matt does. Yeah, that's what Matt does.
Well, that's what I was going to
see what you did there.
Ask a little bit. Chad, you kind of talked about how, once you went from multiple integrators to one integrator, it really helped you grow, and kind of a little bit behind the why. Lars, how about you? I know you recently had, was a year or two ago, Matt rejoined your organization, and for a while you didn't have an integrator, and you recently, or I don't know when it was, but added an integrator. What was that change like, and how did how did that help you? Not what happened, but why did it help you? What did he do for you?
Well, I think it's basically very common to what we've just been discussing. I think how Chad's described Zach. I think Matt would be quite similar in that role, where we laugh that and Tony, don't jump down my throat, but I think we have about 65, maybe 70 people, might be 55. I don't know. I honestly don't have a clue, but we have that many people, and Matt made this joke the other day. I have one that reports to me,
mm-hmm. Which is probably for the best.
Yeah, the other 64 report to him, and then I complain about the one that reports to me. I was like, "You won't even believe this." He's like, "Oh yeah, how's that?" So, yeah. So what it's really done, as long as. One of the main conversations we had. So, I always described it as, Matt was always a very good number two, and he was that traditional integrator role. He'd be in all the meetings. He'd actually make sure stuff got done. Mm-hmm. There was a point where I think he probably felt, unappreciated. Mm-hmm. Well, I know he felt unappreciated. One of the biggest downfalls and kind of buyer beware stories here of being a visionary is you don't stop to smell the roses. It's always, okay, what's next? Hey, we just knocked this out of the park. Okay, cool. So what about this? Right. Mm-hmm. And we completely downplay and diminish all of the work and effort. Like we're like, hey, we want to build this barn and paint it. And we're like, in my mind, it's just like, well, yeah, that's easy. Just build a barn and throw some paint on it, right? The amount of work that goes into that, and then the people that have to do it off my limited direction and idea, like, and so it's completely downplayed. So as the integrator, you're just like, dude, this was 1,000 hours of work, and you're just like, hey, what's next, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, or as Chad would say, what else? Right. Mm-hmm. So, there was that portion, and that's where Matt thought, he was tired of it, wanted to try something else, went somewhere else. And then, I think realized that, maybe there was other things going on. So when he came back, one of the first things we talked about, and I said was important to me, is if we come back, we first of all have to, we got to work on our friendship. We got to, because we were friends to start with. Mm-hmm. That's how we knew each other. We were buddies. So it was important that if we're going to be successful in this, it's when our personal relationship breaks down is when the business suffers. So we play golf every week together, and, we have a standing golf match. His wife plays with us too. And, so it's a personal thing. So that was kind of the beginning of it. And then it's the cadence of a weekly meeting and check in, and, like how his boys one of his sons just beat an undefeated team in the championship of their baseball league. And, it was a big thing, but having that personal touch has really added a whole bunch to it. And then having him, me understand that every once in a while I got to say, hey, thanks, man, for running the entire company while I'm, chasing my tail and whatever whimsical idea came through. And then, kind of staying out of his way and letting him do things. And I think what he does really well is, he makes the notes of our conversations. Then he comes back and says, like, is this what you meant? This is the direction we're going? Because again, being someone that's not, consistent, and I don't focus on the wording a lot. We just had one, what was it? Just had something the other day where, we'd set a goal, and the words that I used to describe the goal had him going in a whole different direction. Thankfully, it was only a few days, but I came back, I was like, oh, that's not that's not what I meant at all. So yeah, we just got in that routine, and I think it's made the company a lot stronger, a lot more structured. You know, we have operating procedures, all that stuff that I said, yeah, that's a good idea, but never actually do it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I think we're getting a little long in the tooth here, aren't we? I think we're supposed to be at takeaways here like 20 minutes ago. We're supposed to be wrapping up. I know, Tony, you got to play some golf. No, in true Unlock fashion, do we just say, okay, bye and hang up?
just kill it at the end. Yeah. I mean, that probably works.
Yeah. All right. See you guys.
I think these conversations can go very long because one, for me, I have lived the challenge of this for such a long time. Yeah. Lars, you have as well. Tony, you have. We've all undergone these challenging times of understanding it, and now it's like, okay, it still isn't perfect, but I'm starting to get the hang of it a little better, and can see some light at the end of the tunnel because we found some good working relationships and some good working partnerships that kind of bring things to life. And it's fun when they work together. It's fun because you accomplish something, right? And when everybody gets into their comfort zone
and
to
do what you
role,
like,
it's great. Man. So that's awesome.
Tony, give me a key takeaway.
Yeah, I actually have a really good takeaway. I never thought of it this way, but I really like the idea of the idea filter. I've thought of the integrator as more the person that makes it happen, but I've never really thought about it as this person is filtering your ideas. To me, that is really helpful. I think the integrator is the one in charge. Yeah, because right now I am coming up with ideas and then deciding which ones to act on. And that's something actually I'm going to try to change is filter those ideas through a few people and stop being the idea person and the decision person, because that's I think slowing us down. So that's my big takeaway is filtering those ideas through someone else can really unlock some growth. No pun intended there.
Well, I'm glad you got some value out of this podcast, Tone.
Yeah.
After mentioning to Chad this morning that he's recorded 200 episodes of the Coffee Break podcast, and you didn't listen to them.
I listened to every one of them. Yes.
Chad, give me a takeaway here. Give me a takeaway.
No, man, it's a reminder for me of the importance of building the relationship. I think one of the things you just said at the very end there was big. Building that relationship with your integrator, not just work related, but outside. I think that's one of the things I probably have done, but didn't particularly recognize it, and then continue to lean into that. Make sure that you're connecting outside of the hard times of getting things done in the business and go enjoy life together. Because the longer that you can continue to build that relationship, one, that it's going to be easier to call you out on stupid things and make sure that filter is engaged at a higher level. So it's pretty awesome.
It helps so it bends and doesn't break.
Yeah,
right. Correct. The more personal relationship is the more bend without break. And that's, I think that's key. And, for me, this has been a good reminder that I need to articulate with words, because some people, for some reason, listen to the words that I say and think that has meaning.
I can't imagine there's many that do that, but
I am so reliant on context and how it was said and who it was said and what was going on around. The words that come out of my mouth are secondary, and that's got to be fatiguing and challenging for people that are trying to follow that direction.
I can only imagine.
I will also say this, because Tony's going to bring us up with our topic for next episode, but I am going to be super frustrated with you, Lars, if this episode opens up the floodgates of Tony using the term Visionary and Integrator for the next 18 months, because
we had long 2 years.
We had literally just closed that chapter of our lives and moved on to everybody's culture index awareness, and now you're going to
I remember we were in the car driving to the go-kart incident, whenever that was. That was a few years ago, but we were like driving in the car and just kind of talking, and then did Tony just leave? Did his camera just shut off and leave? But Tony was just sitting in the back seat, and he was like, I was thinking, who do you think that guy? Do you think Alan's an integrator, or do you think everything was? Is that an integrator or a visionary? Every person, there'd be a guy in the grocery store. Hey, that guy looks like a visionary.
Looking at the people driving beside of us, I wonder if he's an integrator or a visionary.
That was.
So we had just closed that chapter of our conversation, and then you just opened it back up.
I knew you would hate this, but
you guys know how to tell a good fisherman story. That's for sure.
I want to. Before, Tony, you give us this topic, I think we got to acknowledge the guy that's actually behind this camera work doing. Wasn't it his birthday the other day?
Yeah, Aaron just celebrated. He turned 42.
The Beeve.
Happy birthday.
So, believe it or not, this podcast isn't as polished as it seems. And there is actually someone that knows what they're doing that makes us sound a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
So
brings it all together.
Shout out to our boy. He's there somewhere.
And edits out the nonsense that we hope that you'll never hear. So.
Which is absolutely a tough job.
Yes. Tony, what are we doing next?
Oof. I'm going to get some eye rolls for this one. You guys are not going to like this.
I hate it already.
Yes, I'm setting you up.
No.
So I want to talk about documentation and standardization. How do you make that happen? I think that is a very underappreciated piece to growth. You have to standardize your company and document it, and that's a tedious process. That is,
I think it's a good topic,
and I think it's a challenging process. So I'm interested to learn how you guys have done that successfully. You guys might need to go talk to Matt and Zach to figure that out, but at least you have a while to figure that out.
You want to talk about
that?
How to
was
document?
Yes,
stuff.
Yes. So as expected, Chad appreciates the topic, and Lars hates it because he hates everything that I say. So
we'll see. We'll see in 2 weeks, everyone. Just ignore us next week.
Hey, I'm just thrilled at least one of you like the topic. So
I like lined paper. Chad, mercifully end this before we get any more terrible ideas. Where do they find us here?
Unlockedpodcast.com is the website for the blog and all of our contact information. Find us on LinkedIn. Find us not on TikTok, but Instagram, Facebook, any of those places. And reach out. We text message, phone calls. We love hearing from you and ideas. A huge shout out to Uncle Glenn, who gives us a great synopsis of our episodes every week and good feedback.
Start writing our blogs for us.
Actually, that would be a great idea. We should implore him to do that. But yeah, so we appreciate the feedback. It helps us understand kind of where we're hitting and where we're missing. So we definitely appreciate that. You can subscribe on all the podcast platforms. Make sure you find us on YouTube so you can see the video version, and go check out Tony's Curious George artwork over his left shoulder or something like that. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the feedback. Thank you for coming back week after week. And on true Unlocked podcast fashion,